Hello and welcome to Raheen's page. This is me, Raheen Fatima, and today we have Dr. Nicole. Hello, how are you?
Hello, everybody out there. I am fabulous, thank you, and totally excited to be here with you guys.
That's great. Okay, so can you please introduce yourself for the people who don't know you?
Sure. So, my name is Dr. Nicole Gruel. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I am a Radiance Coach. So, I help people out who've had transformative life experiences and especially spiritually transformative experiences. And I help them make sense of that, understand their gifts, and get on being awesome people in the world.
Oh, that's cool work.
Totally. I love it. I meet the best people.
Yes, I mean, who gets that? That I think that should be part of the coolest jobs of the world.
And I think it should be part of what we learn at school. I mean, I meet a lot of people that, they're like, why don't we learn this stuff in school about relationships and about how to understand our gifts and our talents? And yeah, to me, that's the most exciting stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go a few years back. How was your childhood?
Well, I had a really wonderful childhood, actually. So it was just me and my parents. And in Sydney, Australia. But I came from very global parents. So my dad was French, my mother's Japanese, and they met in Mexico. That's a whole other crazy love story. But they were very open-minded people that have traveled a lot. So I had a really kind of open and free and natural childhood. And my father raised me on wonderful stories. He had spent time in Pakistan. He spent time along the Silk Road. And so he fed me lots of stories as a child about, meditating in caves in India and being on the Silk Road and being in Marrakesh and snake charmers and all kinds of really, stories that you would normally read in a book. And he had lived those stories. So it gave me a sense of adventure in the world, that there were just so many cool adventures out there that I could have. And I was also really curious as a kid. I wanted to explore lots of things. I asked my dad when I was about 7 years old, what God do I believe? And he gave me an answer. He said, my darling, anything you want. And as a kid, that was great because it meant I was open to whatever I wanted to do. But as a kid, it was also not so great because I wanted him to tell me what to do. And so now I can look back on that and see it as a total blessing that I was able to go out and explore and find that answer for myself.
Okay. So that's a pretty interesting childhood. So you have any memories of you being naughty?
Oh, I do actually. The one that comes to mind, I haven't shared this one before, but when I was really small, like 2 or 3 years old, I had this lady who used to look after me at school and after school. And I have this weird memory where I guess because I made her really, really angry that day, I picked my nose and I stuck it on the wall. And seemed like a normal thing for me to do, but boy, was she angry. And I've never forgotten about that. Great question.
Okay, so that's a bizarre thing to do.
You know what kids are like? They do that. Kids explore their bodies. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know any 2 or 3-year-old that doesn't pick their nose.
Let's not get into picking noses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how were your teen years when you started growing up, understanding a lot of stuff? And teen years are the most fun, carefree. Spending time with friends. You know, that kind of time.
Absolutely. So I loved hanging out with my friends. I had a pretty mixed group of friends and a lot of older friends. So some were my friends at school, but I had a lot of friends out of school as well because I lived a bit far from my school. And I was a pretty naughty teenager. Probably shouldn't go into all of those stories, but again, I like to explore. And yeah, but overall, I guess that theme of exploration continued. You know, I got a job when I was really young. My first job was as a dishwasher, and I was so short. I'm really short, and the sink was really high, so I had to stand on a brick for like 5 or 6 hours just to wash the dishes and do all of that there. But apparently, I did a really good job because my boss wanted me to stay for a long time. So that was my first ever job, and I was a pretty responsible young teenager. And when I got enough money with my job, what I would keep doing is I'd use it to go traveling. So as soon as I could, I started going backpacking to places. So I'd work, I'd do school, and then in the holidays, I'd go traveling. And I just kept exploring and meeting new people and seeing places. And I guess one experience I should tell you about that was pretty profound. When I was 14 years old, I was in New Zealand and I was whitewater rafting, and our boat tipped over and I fell out of the boat, and I had this thing called a near-death experience. It's when you go down, well, for me, it was a drowning experience, and I went deep under the water and all the water was black and I didn't know which way to go, up or down. Hi to everyone live, by the way. I can see people popping in. And the strangest thing happened. The water was black everywhere, and then all of a sudden, this horizon of light opened up in front of me, and I saw my grandma, who was actually living at that time, and I saw my first dog, who had passed over. And I was only 14 years old, so I just thought, that's a little bit strange. And we got out of the water again, and I was okay, and I really didn't think much of it. But as I grew up in my life, I've come to understand how important that experience was, that I got to experience something pretty out of the ordinary for ordinary life. And that's a really cool thing.
Well, that is a super cool thing. So you told that your first job was this dishwashing while you were still a teenager. Don't you think parents should actually start letting, because in Pakistan, they don't let kids do jobs until they graduate, university graduate. So
Yeah,
don't you
look,
think that's bad?
it is what it is. I mean, we have to respect culture as well. And at the same time, young people like you are the new culture coming through. So you're very global, clearly, and you're going to be challenging some of the old traditional ways, and that's okay. I wasn't working legally. I was actually too young to work at 14, but my father had passed away, and I felt very responsible. Like, that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to take care of my family. So I went ahead and did that and started earning money young. Um, I think if you have the privilege to have an education and enjoy your childhood as much as possible, that you should go ahead and do that. And at the same time, I think there's nothing wrong with learning responsibility. So whether it's in a paid job somewhere, or even if you're doing something like washing cars, washing windows, tutoring, things like that, I think that's a marvelous informal way to work as well, to get some skills happening.
Yes, and I think it's really, really important because kids, when they're doing some sort of part-time job or doing the hard work, they really understand how the world really works. It isn't fairies everywhere and everything. They start learning how the world is and how we need to survive in the world because we really need to somehow. I mean, here in Pakistan, the sad thing is that people are university graduates. People are in their 20s and they're still dumbheads. They don't know anything about the world somehow because they're so pampered in their house or in their societies that they didn't face the real world. And as soon as they do, that's mostly after most of their relatives turn old or they finally step out of this pampered society, then they see like how the world is,
And I think
and
that's
then
not
they start
unique.
exploring.
I think it's not unique to Pakistan. I think it's pretty common with a lot of university graduates who, they get pumped through the school system, and everyone goes through grade by grade, and you go through the pattern you're meant to go through, and you get very involved in your head and academically. And so many young people come out without basic life skills. Like, how do I have a relationship with someone? And when we get into an argument, what am I meant to say and what am I meant to do, right? The answers aren't going to be in the textbook or in your phone. So those are one of the important things. Other basic things like getting along with people, leadership skills, basic finances, structuring a business if you're an entrepreneur. These are not things we tend to learn at school. And I don't remember if I've used any of the calculus or other bits and pieces that I was trained in. It's like, where did that even come into use? And look, I'm not saying it isn't for mathematicians and sciences. If that's your pathway, great. But it's not everybody's pathway. So I agree with you completely. Life skills are so important.
Yes, there are. And the most important skill, even yesterday I was talking about, is communication skills. And in order to, communicate with people, we need to learn that we need to get out of our comfort zones. And our comfort zones is this is our family, our close family, and it's our friends. It's nobody else. Nobody would enter there unless you talk to them.
Totally, totally. And so sometimes it's okay to be out of these safe spaces. Yeah, we need to learn failure. What happens when we fail, and that it's okay to do that? And how do we pick ourselves up again and just get on with it and try something new? Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so uh, we talked about this, and then I want to ask you that. Okay, you started with dishwashing, but how did you got, to what you're doing right now?
Wow, yeah, it's a far way from dishwashing. So, what happened next? I was dishwashing, I carried on with my studies. I actually did some, that's nice, a country of hard workers but without guidelines. Wow. That's a serious statement, and it's great that people are very hardworking. I think it's a time that we're in on the planet where people can be very innovative and learn how to apply those skills, in different directions. So, right, back to the story. So you asked about dishwashing. So I carried on with my studies and I carried on working in hospitality. So I also worked as a waitress and, in the service industry for some time. And my first degree was in social sciences, so humanities, social sciences, and international studies, and I lived abroad a bit. That was all really exciting, and I love that. But just like you identified before, I learned a whole heap of stuff, but I didn't have skills to come out. And one organization, I worked with Oxfam for a little bit of time there. And I had the wonderful opportunity to work in their youth partnership program, which brings 300 young people, youth leaders like yourself from all around the world, many, many different countries. And these are young people who are standing up in their communities to do things differently, to bridge the wisdom of the elders with the youth that are coming through, to address services, etc., and tackle problems. And I was like, wow, these are the most amazing young people from all across the world. They're incredible. I love this kind of work. So that led me into the whole field of international development, and I actually went down. I learned how to teach English. I spent a bit of time living in Bangladesh, actually, so not too far from where you are. And I met a lot of beautiful Pakistani students and Indian students, Cambodian, Sri Lankan, all around Southeast Asia. We all lived together and studied together. And so I just had this love of learning and people. But I had a really important experience with one Sri Lankan young lady. She had left her village to get this higher education, but she didn't feel she was doing very well because, as you know, in Asia, there's a lot of pressure on young people to perform well academically, right? It's pretty full on. And she felt like if she went back to her town, her village, she would be looked at as a failure, especially as a young woman in her young 20s who was not. I was working with a lot of young women in their young 20s. And of course, if you're not married by a certain age, that's also looked upon in a particular way, right? So they were all not married yet, but they were all pursuing higher education, and she just felt like she would be a failure, and she wanted to do something very drastic and end her life. And I didn't know what to do in that moment, and so we sat and we held hands and we both cried. And fortunately, she's still alive today and she's doing really well. She lives in Australia, actually. But I made a promise to myself in that moment that I would never be so helpless ever again. If someone ever, said that they were in trouble like that and they didn't know what to do, I wanted to know how to help. And so that kickstarted my journey past teaching into counseling and then into coaching. And I love academia as well. And so I pursued that through my life, and I ended up getting a doctorate in the area of what's called transpersonal psychology. It's like spiritual psychology. And the whole idea of that is helping people be their best as a human being. What is our best potential? And also, what are the experiences beyond being human that can make us as individuals and as communities even more wonderful?
Ah, that's totally wonderful. Okay, so how was counseling and then how was coaching? Because you have experiences throughout your journey to fulfill your goal. To fulfill your goal.
Yeah. So what do you mean by how is it?
How was the experience of counseling? What kind of people did you get? Was it fun? Was it was it sad sometimes? Because counseling or coaching, you need to listen a lot.
Oh, and I love listening, so that's not a problem for me. That's one of my skills. Counseling, you're right. People come with problems to counseling. And the reason I'm not a counselor anymore, I use those skills when the time is needed. But the reason I'm not a counselor anymore is I felt so often we were kind of going around in circles with problems and problems and problems. And so I wanted a way that could move towards solutions, really empowered solutions. And that's why I moved into coaching, because that's what that's all about. So you're looking at goals and people's directions and their dreams, and you help them move towards that. And when the sad parts come up and the problems and things from the past that they want to process, we can also talk about that as well, because it's important to do that too. We need to acknowledge those things.
Yeah, okay. So you had you did you study coaching or counseling, or was it just psychology?
Oh, no, no. I studied coaching and counseling and then psychology as well. Absolutely. All of the above. So some of it, the coaching and the counseling, those are more like practical skills. You have to do a lot of training and in session with people, right? Because that's only through experience that you learn. But something like psychology or philosophy, these are, you can jump into the books, you can have tutors and lectures, and you can learn kind of through the head. So for me, it's really important to do a whole learning, your head, your heart, your body, all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Hassan Ali and he has a question. I was gonna tell that at the end, but it is important. So, how to connect with Dr. Nicole for arranging a collaborative live stream just like Raheen. So, basically, I'm doing an interview, but if you want to do something else, you could ask Dr. Nicole. So, what's
Yeah,
your
you
invite?
can just shoot me a message via Facebook. I guess my link is going to be here somewhere, and so just Hassan, shoot me a message. We'll have a chat. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to ask that you were very much because I saw your profile before I was interviewing you. So I saw that you're really much interested in how the body and the human beings are connected to the earth, and then it's the entire world, and you even have the world emoji in your introduction. So yeah, what's the love with the world, the earth?
Wow, the world that we live in is such an amazing place, and the privilege that we have as humans to be here is pretty special. So, there's nothing like having an experience like I did, a near-death experience, and, potentially losing my life to really appreciate it. And of course, as a young kid, I lost a lot of people very quickly that were important to me, including my father. And for anyone who's listening out there, if you've lost someone close to you, or even, maybe a pet or a close friend, you know how precious life is. It makes you really understand that maybe we don't have tomorrow, or maybe we don't have long. And so we need to make the most of the time that we have. And, I really think this planet is a special place that we're on, and we can do amazing things together while we're here. And I guess the earth part, the more we connect to nature and the more we can also connect to our personal nature, our own natural way of being, the more amazing things start to happen.
Okay. So now our interview is coming to an end, but at the end, I'd like to ask you just one thing, that please give out a message to our audience.
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of this interview. It's so marvelous to be connecting with you and your listeners. And if there's anything I could share, it is to shine your light, to be yourself and shine your unique light, because the world needs what you offer. So walk strongly down that road, figure out what it is, learn your gifts, apply your gifts, and do you and be you in the world, because that's a beautiful thing and it's contagious.
Thank you so much for two things. First, for coming, sharing the life experiences, and then for giving out such a beautiful message. And for the audience, thank you so much for watching. We had a great audience, as in Pakistan, it is quite early in the morning, but we still
Sorry
had a
about
great
that.
audience.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and inshallah, we'll bring you another person and who will tell you interesting stories. So thank you and goodbye.